Welcome to Freedom Cast, where your hosts, Jordan and Miranda, show you how to get just a little bit more out of life. Are you ready to leave normal behind?
Welcome, Freedom Casters, to this week of Freedom Cast, Leaving Normal Behind. Miranda and I are going to be speaking about introverts and extroverts. Now, this is something that most people know. It's something that a lot of people are interested in. If you say, I don't really want to hang out tonight, or I don't really feel like going to that party, I'm more of an introvert, or I don't really feel like sharing in this group session, I'm more of an introvert. It usually comes out people talking about their own introversion. The right way to say that? Their own introversion?
Sure.
We'll say it. You know what I mean. It usually comes out I think it has sometimes can have a negative connotation as like an excuse not to do something. But Miranda and I would just want to talk about both ends, and just how to think about, if you are an extrovert, then how to think about how to do certain things. If you veer more toward the introvert side, maybe some tips and suggestions on just getting through life as an introvert, because it's just an interesting subject.
It is. And most people, as you said, already know whether they are introverted or extroverted.
It's a pretty popular thing.
It is. And it's interesting because it's not just black and white. It's more of a spectrum. So some people are super extroverts, love being around people. That's where they get their energy. They are just bouncing around at the party. They're loving it. And then there are people who are super introverts. And then there's all in between too. It's not just black and white.
And I feel like a lot of people do end up being in that in-between area.
Yes. I think more likely than not, you're somewhere in the middle.
So really the definition, as I would see it, is where you get your energy from. And that's where I hear a lot of people talking about it. It's not really about introverts are shy and extroverts like hanging out with a bunch of people. Those are kind of the stereotypical views of introverts and extroverts, but it's really at the end of the day, where do you get your energy?
Yeah. Because
go ahead.
Introverts aren't necessarily shy. You can have shy introverts, but there's also, it's not.
You can have shy extroverts as well.
They're not mutually exclusive.
You got it.
So that's something to keep in mind. But it is all about that energy. So if you are around a lot of people, do you find that just lifts you up and you're just loving it and you just feel all this energy? Or do you go and hang out with a bunch of people and then feel the need to just have some alone time, go home and read a book, and just recoup a little bit? So that's kind of the basics of which one you are. Just where is it your energy taken or given, or just where's the flow of the energy?
And this theory first came about and was introduced by Carl Jung. He is a 20th century Swiss psychiatrist. He's pretty famous guy. I don't know a lot about him, but I have heard the name, and you probably heard the name too. I wanted to mention that, but then also talk about the fact that it's important to remember that this is just a concept. It's just an idea of how to think about things. As Miranda was saying, people are going to usually fall, in the middle. They're not going to fall on either end of the extremes. So I think it's important to mention before we even really get into it, is to not really view these concepts as facts, as things that are just the way life is, but just to think of it as a way to help us kind of figure these things out. Does that make sense, Miranda?
Yeah, because there's so many other factors too. If you do the personality test, the introvert extrovert is just the first part of the 4 letters
of the Myers-Briggs personality test.
So Jordan and I are actually both INFJs, and the first letter, the I, is introvert. But then that's not the only thing they're categorizing. It's more. So it's just a part of the puzzle of who you are.
Yes. And I think, and that's why I wanted to mention that, just because it is a part, but it's just important to remember that it's not, we don't have to label ourselves as that and then we're stuck in that forever. Like, well, I'm an introvert, I don't have to go to that party, or I'm an introvert, so I'm never going to be a public speaker, kind of those thoughts. Or I'm an extrovert, like I always need to be hanging out with people, and those things are not necessarily true. As an introvert, you can be a public speaker. You could be a great public speaker. As an extrovert, you can be very knowledgeable if you take the time to make sure you're taking the time to read and doing those type of things, and not always just doing whatever is the most comfortable for you.
And it's interesting, too, to think about nature versus nurture and how that plays into that as well. Were you raised around a lot of people that were extroverts, and that's just what you kind of observed and what you followed the example of? Or is that written in your DNA and you have to actively work to change and become one way or the other?
All interesting stuff.
Yeah.
So crazy. Miranda, before we go any further, are you an introvert or are you an extrovert?
I am. That's it. I am an introvert, but like I said before, on the spectrum, I'm fairly close to the middle, but
you are a pure middle child, a true middle child.
True middle child. But on the introverted side, I really do love being around people, but it has to be in the right setting. And sometimes I feel like a party animal, but then other times I'm just, oh man, I don't want to have to try and be around people today. And it really depends on my mood and what's going on, because sometimes I feel more introverted or more extroverted depending on the day. So
yep, that's
me. I'm introverted, but I'm right in that line close to the middle. So
an introvert with an abundance of extroverted
tendencies,
attributes. I was gonna say tendencies is what I was looking for.
Okay, yeah. Because sometimes I get frustrated because I want to be more extroverted, but then my introverted self is like, no. If I'm in a place where I don't know everybody, I recognize that I want to go talk to people I don't know and introduce myself, but then it feels a little bit like a barrier of, well, I'm more comfortable with the people I know, kind of.
Yeah, and I think, like anything, it's finding the right balance. It's finding really, for Miranda, she works with other people all day. And for me, I don't work with people all day in person. I work with people like online and stuff. But it's just something to think about. She has that all day. And then I have that, I do that I don't have that most of the day. That's what I'm trying to say. So you just have to think about where your balance is. Like for me, I am more of an introvert, but then I also need that time like with other people as well. Because I know if I'm by myself for too long, I can go a little crazy. Because you can start to feel isolated. You start to feel not necessarily lonely, but you just like, I think humans in general just get so much energy off other humans. Even if they tend to be more introverted, we still get that energy off of other people.
Exactly. And it is, for me, if it's a lot of people, because this past weekend we went out dancing. I went with some friends, and I don't normally go out, and it was late, and I'm usually try to get to bed by 10, 11-ish, and I could just feel the energy being sapped from me because I was already tired, and just having that many people around and the music, it was just, I could just feel my energy. Like I was just envisioning being home, curled up in front of the fire, and was just like, oh, I can't wait till I get home. So it definitely manifests itself in certain situations.
Yes.
So what would you say is the biggest pro and the biggest con to being an extrovert and an introvert?
Well, let's start with introvert. I think the biggest pro is that I don't want to say this like too generally, but I feel like introverts are kind of forced to have more of an understanding on themselves because we spend more time thinking about certain things on a deeper level because we spend more time alone. So I think that's the biggest pro because we start to learn ourselves better. But then I think the biggest weakness can just be not being able to get out of our comfort zone. I think a lot of introverts get stuck in that bubble, and then they're comfortable there. They're like, okay, I like being alone. I like just sitting by the fire reading a book, and that's all I'm going to do. And that can be very dangerous too, because we're not really going to learn. We're not going to grow if we're not putting ourselves out there. So again, that's why I said finding the right balance between the two, I think, is super important, because you can't, unless you really are like 100% introvert, it's really not a good idea to spend all of your time in that mode.
Yeah, because life is all about relationships, whether you like it or not. So even in your job, you may be the most qualified, but people go for personality, people go for relationships, and you have to build that with people. So that's definitely something, if you are super introverted, that you have to kind of overcome, you have to work really hard at, because it is so important. You can't just go through life without other people.
Yeah, because I couldn't even think of any. There are very, very, very few lines of work that you can do without interacting with another human being. Now, eventually, there'll probably be more, when more stuff is automated, because we can order groceries online and pretty much not even have to talk to a human, just pull up. So it's kind of crazy, like where that could eventually go. So it's very important for introverts to be thinking about that. So listeners out there, just be thinking about striking the right balance. You do want to maintain your own energy, and that's good. Obviously make sure you're getting enough sleep and make sure that's not affecting your energy levels. But you really want to be focused on, doing the things that are good for you.
Yeah.
So what would you say is the biggest pro and con to being an extrovert, since you tend to be more on that realm?
I think the biggest pro for extroverts is that easy ability to network and meet new people and build those connections. Because for an extrovert, it's nothing to go up to someone you don't know and shake their hand and say, "Hi, I'm Miranda."
That's true, because the energy cost for us to do that is like, we go and do that and we just feel like an immediate depletion.
Yeah, and
I spent a lot to do that.
I know I've done it before, where I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this, and I go, it's like, hey, hi, how are you? Good, how are you? Good, and then I just blank on what do you say next? What's after that? Like, oh man, that's pretty cold outside, huh? Like,
it is hard to not, and that's another thing I was reading that was interesting too, that they say that introverts don't really like small talk. They want the conversation to go deeper, and I think it's partly because we think introverts think on a deeper level, but it's also because that small talk is super uncomfortable. Like you were just saying, you get to that point where like, I just worked up the energy to talk to this person, and I'm like, I really wanted to like meet them, but now what the heck do I do?
What's the next step? How do you go from hello to meaningful friendship? I think
you invite them on a podcast, because then they have to talk to you.
That's true. That's
where
really well for us.
That's where we do it.
But the biggest con for extroverts, I mean, it may be just that they have a very good breadth of relationship, but I think they might have a harder time with the depth part.
Yeah.
If you're an introvert and you can overcome the initial energy of meeting the person, getting past the small talk, you just want to delve into talking about the important things and that sort of thing. Extroverts can bounce around a party all night, and they might not get more of a meaningful conversation with someone,
when an introvert could sit and talk with the same person if they were really interested in them for 3 hours
about the meaning of life.
Like, great, I made my connection, we're talking, I'm good. Like, that's all I really want to do.
Yeah, and
which is really good, but also can be bad too.
Yeah, because for introverts, just a smaller group is much more comfortable, and I can feel that if there's 4 of us and we're talking, and then all of a sudden it's 6 of us, and it's okay, I'm still comfortable with this, and all of a sudden it's 10, and I feel like, ooh, I can't talk anymore. This is too many people, kind of. So it is, extroverts would feel more comfortable in that situation and be, who cares how many people are listening? I got something to say, I'm going to talk. But an introvert is going to have a harder time with that. And I know for me, I run things through my head before I say it. And so that's always, I have to think about it like, oh, is that dumb? If I say that, is that stupid? Is everyone going to think I'm an idiot? And you have to like run it through like internal processing. And then by the time I'm like, okay, this is appropriate, I can say it. And then
the moment's gone.
We've moved on. So
that is another thing I've been learning about. Even a smaller group of 10 to 12 people, it's important that you say, what's on your mind. Unless there are some things you should keep to yourself. But if you just remember you have something valuable to give. And that's something I've been realizing and thinking about more and more, that other people can benefit from what I'm saying. Even if I don't necessarily feel super comfortable sharing something, if I think that another person in the group or in the room can benefit from my words, then it's important for me to say that. You just have to be able to jump in and start talking, especially if you're in a group of mostly extroverts who are going to be jabbering.
Dominating the conversation.
The conversation. As an introvert, you need to learn how to jump in, even if it's like, hey, raise my hand. No, probably don't raise your hand because people are going to think you're crazy. But just try to jump in, be like, I have something valuable to say. And for the most part, people are going to stop talking and listen to you unless they're rude. But if they're going to be rude and talk over you, then maybe they're not, a good group to hang out with, or maybe they're not good friends. So I just think thinking about that is important. Thinking about the fact that the group, is going to benefit from what you have to say. So don't be afraid to jump in and start talking and to say your point. Because as an introvert, most likely you're never going to dominate the conversation. There are times when I leave groups and I'm like, oh man, like I talk too much. And then I ask someone, they're like, oh, you barely talked at all. And I'm like, oh, I thought I talked.
Wow.
I thought I dominated the conversation. So something as an introvert, most likely because of our filters, because we're thinking about a lot of things, we're not going to ever be in a situation where we're dominating the conversation.
You only think you're dominating the conversation because you have 5 different conversations going on in your head at the same time. But I know for me, I have come a really long way, because when I was young, when I was in elementary school, I was super shy, painfully shy and introverted and scared of people. I don't know.
Did you mean college?
Nah. Well, even in college, I mean, where I am now.
College kind of forces you, especially dorm lifestyle, forces you more to. Yeah. You can't really truly be an introvert.
Avoid people.
And avoid people at college. But sorry, go ahead. Yeah. I was just making a joke.
No, but in elementary school, I would just walk by myself at recess, because I was
really?
Because I don't know, because I was a totally different kid at home, and I know a lot of kids are that like that way. At home with my family, I was crazy and goofy and like laughing, funny. But when I was at school, I was just totally different kid. Just like, what do I do?
You wouldn't have done a song and dance routine with Justine with ribbons at school?
No, not in elementary school. No, definitely.
I honestly can't picture anything else, Miranda. When you talk about yourself as a kid, I picture that video that we shared like 5 or 6 podcast episodes ago. I love that video.
Yeah,
I should share it again. I should put it on every post.
Everyone, yeah,
it's amazing.
That was the real me. But then at school, I always had super stress at school and just, anxiety.
Yep.
I cried so much in elementary school. I was also a perfectionist, and if I couldn't figure out alphabetical order, and I just started bawling one day. My poor teachers would ask my mom, like, your other kids weren't like this. Like, what'd you do to this one?
This one's crazy.
But no, all that to say, I have come a very long way from that, and I think it's important to make yourself uncomfortable and stretch yourself. Even if you're an extrovert, I challenge you to spend time with yourself. Just stay at home and just sit down and think for a while. Just do something different. Push yourself a little bit. It's good for you.
Yep. So, big picture, Miranda. Let's get into the meat of this podcast episode. Why are we talking about this?
Was that just all hors d'oeuvres?
No, that was all, that was appetizers. That was a main meal. You can call this dessert if you want, because I know that's your favorite part.
Yeah,
we'll call this
the most important part.
The dessert of the meal. This is the main main course as far as Miranda would think of it. As I was thinking about it, it's really the main idea is to be real, to get to know yourself, and just to be who you are. Don't be stuck in that. And everyone's like that in school. Like in school, I feel like a lot of people are like that. They're reserved in school. They're not going to jump out and be crazy, and then they go home, and then they're nuts. They're a totally different person. I think it's important to consider how we're acting in our adult lives. Are we doing that? Are we being real with people? Are we having real conversations, or are we just, spinning our wheels and having surfacey conversations? And I think that's an important part of this podcast for us. Is Miranda and I love being super goofy. Obviously, we love just being ridiculous. But at the same time, we want there to be that dessert there of good information for you guys and just real stuff, because we don't ever want to be fake. We want to be real. And I think that's an important thing to consider in this whole realm of introversion and extroversion and all that stuff. Because at the end of the day, that stuff is just a label, and it's just not who we are. It's not truly who we are as persons. It's just part of us. What do you think about that, Miranda? You think that's like the real? Because I think being real is so important, and people don't talk about it enough.
Yeah, it's extremely important, and it's hard to know. You don't want to sound crazy if there's someone you know relatively well and you want to just delve into a serious topic. You want to talk about an issue you're having, or you want to talk to them about something they're doing. Whatever it is, it can be hard to get real with people. And it is, if you are, your personality type, you have to accept that and enjoy that. But it's definitely also, like I said before, pushing yourself and trying to learn and grow. But just knowing is good. Knowing whether you're introverted or extroverted, knowing your personality type, knowing what your zodiac sign is. It's all good information. But
I don't see why that matters. But we could be real about the fact that, is there really any point to that? Does it matter what your zodiac sign is?
I don't know. I want to be skeptical about it, but part of me has always believed it.
I think it's just mumbo jumbo. But I mean, if someone out there can prove me wrong.
It is based off of the time of year. There could be something too where the planets are placed. I don't know. I can't rule it out completely.
I married a crazy person, ladies and gentlemen. No, I'm just kidding. I know a lot of people are really into that. I don't know enough about it to say it's definitely false. But I will say I'm like highly skeptical that the placement of the planets can affect the personality.
The horoscopes where it tells you like, oh, you're gonna have a great month and you're gonna find love. I don't believe that stuff. That stuff's fun to look at. You're like, oh, I'm gonna find love this month. But I think
we're being real. Miranda is sharing real things with me that I didn't know.
But I think there could be something to what time of year you were born, to what certain personality type you're more predisposed to be. I don't know. It's possible.
It's possible. I like how you use predisposed, so not definitely. It could have like a slight effect.
Yeah, like anything. It could just be a little something that...
I feel like the distance of the moon would have more of an effect than the distance of the planets.
Well, I don't...
There was high tide when I was born, so therefore, I have superhero powers.
That would be awesome.
Yes.
But
moon... You could be the Moon Knight.
Yeah. The moon does, affect our bodies.
Well, I'm saying,
women's, menstrual cycles and stuff.
Yeah. I love your smile when you said that. You were like,
I was like,
guys, she was like, she looked at me like, with a smile, like, oh, menstrual cycle.
I didn't know if you were going to accept it as part of our podcast or not.
I accept it. No, because I think you're very right. That's why I said the moon can affect things.
Yeah, the moon can change your
body.
Why can't
maybe
the
planets have a slight effect.
I don't know.
I don't know. I feel like it's a little bit crazy.
But mine's
or a lot of it.
Pretty accurate for me, the personality type a Virgo.
Personality types, like Myers-Briggs stuff, that stuff is pretty accurate.
Yeah.
But you're saying you're a Virgo.
Yeah. And you're
in
a Pisces,
August.
And it says
that about that.
We are compatible.
No,
as far
well,
as
we are
zodiac
compatible.
signs go.
Do you know what the Virgo dates are?
I'm not sure. I know September 9th is one of them. It's
Because
mostly
I think Pisces
September.
is like the end of February and into March. Don't they go in?
Yeah,
don't they
they're, like,
blend
over-
months?
Yeah, they do. They do blend months.
They blend months.
But that is neither here nor there.
Oh, half our podcasts are neither here nor there, but we love talking about them because you got to add the good conversation into real stuff because that's being real. It's so important. I wish more people could be that way, and it's not easy. Let's jump back to that for a second because it's not easy. It's not easy to be vulnerable with people. I think that's really where it starts. As finding someone close to you that you can be vulnerable with and just being real with them. If someone close to you asks you how you're doing, be honest with them. Tell them how you're doing. If you're doing great, then that's great. Just say you're doing great. Tell them why, and then listen to them. Maybe ask them some deeper questions about how they're doing and see how you can help. And like I said, this is not easy. I don't do this often enough. But I think it's important to think about, if we're not having real conversations with people and building those real friendships, then what are we doing? Are we just, hanging around? Are we just growing surfacey relationships? Like, I don't think anyone would say that they really want that. But as an introvert, it's harder to do. That's why we're sharing this stuff. Just for us to think about as well, and for you guys too.
Yeah, I know a lot of things that have helped us. Definitely moving was a huge one because when you move somewhere where you don't know anybody, you're kind of forced into, well, I have to meet people, so how do we do this? So that pushed us in a big way when it came to relationships and talking to people we don't know. Also working at the retirement home forced us into that as well, so it's kind of a double whammy that helped us out.
That for me especially, because I was in the marketing department and I had to give people tours when they came in, and basically my job was to get introduced to someone when they came in the door, and then half an hour to 45 minutes later when they're ready to go, for them to ask them to give me money, to give me a check to hold their spot at the retirement community. And that was a big learning curve for me, especially as an introvert. For someone, I don't even really necessarily like getting on Skype calls with people, but now that's something I'll do. We can have people on our podcast and we're happy to talk to them. But it's just that was a huge, big fear of mine. And that was huge for me to be able to do that job and to be forced into that situation. Now I'm so much more comfortable with that stuff. Now, I still say I'm an introvert. I don't really look forward to those kind of, conversations. I mean, I do and I don't. It depends. It depends. If it's a brand new person, yeah, there's definitely some anxiety there. Some I don't really feel like doing this. I would rather just be alone. But it's just good to be able to put yourself in those situations.
Yeah, it definitely helps you out, makes you grow as a person. And like we said, if you want to find an easy way to get to know people better, start a podcast, because then you can ask whoever to be on it. And we've learned so much about people that we interact with daily that we didn't know because of the podcast, which has been really cool.
It's cool, yeah, because you can delve deeper. You can ask people more questions.
Yeah.
But as far as doing more and being real and getting yourself out there, I wanted to read a little quote from a recent podcast guest, Jason Clark, his book Untamed. I'm reading through that right now and loving it. But what he shares right here. What I've begun to realize is that though I want to see God move miraculously, I rarely allow myself to be in a situation where I need a miracle. Though I desire to live an untamed faith, I am rarely willing to position myself in discomfort. So again, just the importance of getting yourself out there, being real. There's so much importance to that. I can't stress it enough. I read things like that in books and I'm like, yes, that's how we need to be. Do I always do it? No. But am I working on it? Yes.
And that's the important part. Always be learning, always be growing. We challenge you to just, we never want to have a podcast that just is like, oh, that's great to listen to. But,
except if it's about Marvel, then it's just fun.
Yeah, but it's not practical. Yeah, Marvel wasn't practical, but that's okay.
No, that's all right. And I'm so proud of you right now that you're saying this.
But we just want you guys to listen and to feel inspired, to go make a change, do something different in your life. Try out something new that maybe you hadn't thought of before, because we are all about, if we read a book or read an article, it's okay. that was great, but what can I do with that? What can I actually apply to my life? And sometimes you're going to be like, well, I'm not going to apply any of that. And that's that
fine.
Happens.
Yeah.
But when you can, go for it. Try it. See what happens. I dare you.
Oh.
I double dog dare you.
You just got a double dog Miranda dare. I think we'll end the podcast with that, friends.
Yeah. Not much more to say after that.
Not much more to say. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening to this episode. Stay frosty. Hopefully sometime in North Carolina, it's going to start getting warmer. I know.
Where are you, spring?
I know people up there in Maine that are listening to it just keeps snowing and snowing and snowing and snowing. Hopefully that snow will end by the time summer comes, the 1.5 months of summer that they get up there in Maine. Hopefully I don't have to say stay frosty to you guys. And obviously all of us in North Carolina are staying frosty. So just have a good rest of your weekend. And thank you so much for listening.